Hello, everyone. It's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So, guys, thank you for joining me tonight. I have a special guest, Michael Horn of the Billy Myers UFO Research. Um, this is an interesting case for me. And it's an interesting case for me because there are parts of this case that I've said, I think, before that I'm somewhat skeptical about. So, Michael is going to put up with my skepticism as I ask questions about this particular case. So, Michael, could you please say hello to the audience and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Michael Horn, the authorized American media representative for the Billy Meir UFO contacts. And I'm actually delighted to speak to Jamal and to you guys, the audience. And I hope that if you have questions or challenges during the course of this, this is the way it works on your show, because I'm not sure if it's interactive, but it's all fair game as far as I'm concerned, because and this, Jamal and everybody, the confirmed existence of intelligent space traveling life would be hands down the single most important discovery, true story, whatever you want to call it, in human history. That was proved, and that would only be exceeded by the confirmed existence of contact from and by and with an extraterrestrial race. In the world of UFOs, which has now become a trendy topic, it's automatically assumed by certain people in our society and all over the world. Oh, yes, this alien and that and this contactee, as if it was an established fact. And in my world, I unabashedly say the Billy Meir case is the singularly authentic, the only actual, still ongoing UFO contact case, now spanning more than 76 years. And underneath all that, if that's true, there's a reason for the contacts, and it's not at all out of place to discuss that on a politically oriented show and channel. So that's just an opener.
Fair enough. That's fair. And, a lot of people would push back on the single most contact because you've gotten a lot of heat. Let's be honest. You've gotten a ton of heat with people saying that the Billy Myers case is a hoax and that Billy Myers essentially made these photographs. And just so people can see what I mean, this is Billy Myers in a badass photo of him. I believe this is him in India, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see, how can I flip this? Right here. Here we are. Entire screen. This guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, right here. Present to everyone. So this is Billy Myers in India. He looks badass. I think he's holding the gun, and there's a monkey right there beside him. This is one of the ships, the beam ships, that Billy Myers said he took a photo of. And to be fair, there are a lot of photos that Billy Myers said he took that, again, people have somewhat pushed back on, saying that this looks a little dubious. Now, I'm not going to get into the thing where people are trying to replicate his photos, because I don't. That's always that's neither here nor there for me. It's like, just because you can replicate something doesn't necessarily mean that the thing is fake, that you can replicate it. I need to be ambiguous about it. There's certain things that you can analyze, meaning these kind of like angles and lighting and everything else. But ultimately, at the end of the day, somebody says, "Hey, I replicated this thing." Okay, you've replicated this thing, so what? That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a fake just because you can replicate it. So I'm not necessarily going to attack this from that angle. What I will attack this from the angle of, he's made certain claims. One of the claims that he made that I thought was, he has these contact notes that I was blown away by, where he said that he was taken by aliens to meet Jesus.
No.
Okay, what did he say? I'm sorry. Explain what he said on this.
Okay, this is, I can tell right now that you are on to some of the key points and very, very important things that need to at least have a little expression, so that people will understand how this thing has been presented and also how it's been attacked. And I'm not saying you're attacking, because anything you want to talk about, I'm happy to. So let me try and clarify a couple things. First of all, about the photos.
Go for
it. Actually, this will be something that happened fairly recently. Pardon me, a year and a half ago. And there's nothing I'll avoid speaking about here. I'm just trying to figure out where I want to come in, because you showed a photo of Meir in India in about 64 or so. A year and a half ago, I was contacted on a Saturday morning, an anonymous phone call, well, unknown person to me. Guy calls up, a gruff-sounding older guy. He says, "My name is Joe. I'm an investigator. I found this Billy Meir UFO case, and I want to know if you'll speak to me about it." I said, "Sure." He says, "Well, I think it might be a hoax." I said, whatever you want to talk about. So for about 3 months, Joe calls me regularly about 8:30 in the morning on Saturday. He's an expat. He's living outside of the country in Asia. He's calling me, I guess, at night. We go back and forth. Towards the end of the 3rd month, Joe has had enough of me for some reason. I don't hear from him until the end of August. Suddenly, Joe calls again. And he says, "You still willing to talk to me?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Let me tell you who I am." I said, "Fine." He said, "I am retired from being the top case supervisor for the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation, late 60s to early 70s. Okay. During that time, I personally vetted hundreds of people who were in the military, who were in politics, aspiring for higher office. We were searching out spies and moles and all this stuff." He said, "I'm the guy that sat in there personally and vetted all these people. I read body language, the whole thing." And then he said, "Don't take my word for it." Click. He sends me the email with all of the U.S. government, Air Force heading stuff, referring to him, the dates. He was the real deal. And I said, "Okay." He said, "You want to know about your Billy Meir UFO case?" I said, "I do." "What do you have to say?" He says, "It's 100% ironclad, authentic, and I will personally take on any skeptic that you know is coming at you." I said, "Well, it's very interesting. How did you come to determine that, Joe? Of course, I agree with you. I've almost 40 years here, and I know it's real, but how'd you find out?" He said, "Well, look, I looked at your 1964 information. Here's what I settled right down on first. Here's Billy Meir, 1964. He's 27 years old, hitchhiking around India. He's in the middle of nowhere, and he has 80 UFO photos in a photo album. He is interviewed by a very credible reporter for a prestigious, still existing newspaper who describes those photos, 11 of which you still have. I have to know, as a military investigator, how did Billy Meir come up with 80 UFO photos in 1964 in the middle of nowhere?" Right?
I understand. I guess I'm asking something basic though, because the photos. Look, this is the thing that always got me with the case. There are some things about the case where I thought to myself, "That's odd and that's interesting." There are other things about the case that seems so amazing, and what I mean by amazing, outlandish. Now, I say that not necessarily as a negative. I just say that from the standpoint, I don't have a stone to get to that point. One of those stones was he went back in time to see Jesus. I mean, and I heard that. I said to myself, "That's amazing." I mean, but there are others. Like I gave you another example on this. One of the videos or one of the footage or pictures,
right,
had to do with this one also. Let me share the screen. Present to everyone. Billy Myers said that this was a ray gun. Now, it's possible that it's a ray gun.
Oh, okay. I can't see it here, but I know what you're talking about.
Oh, wait. Let's see. Stop. Let's try to do this again. This.
It's while you're looking for that, this is the alleged weapon from the alleged extraterrestrials that he allegedly used on a couple of occasions to shoot holes through trees, correct? And
that is true. There we are.
Skeptics are unhappy that they don't see him actually shooting the holes through the trees, and it looks like a toy to them, right?
It looks like a toy gun, but wait, before you get to that point, there's more. Like this one too, right here. He said that he was taken back in time by extraterrestrials, and he took a picture of a dinosaur, but they found this dinosaur in a book.
Right.
It looks exactly like the dinosaur that he took a picture of.
Yes, and there's a bunch more. So let me jump on that for you.
Okay.
And here's what it is. In 1975, I think it was 75, in the so-called Great Journey, Meir claims that he was with the Pleiadian extraterrestrials. They took him lots of places. Some places we know of, some we don't. They took him to planets, supposedly, that were in various stages of development. Now, before I continue, let's remember here that we haven't yet established the credibility of the case. We're jumping into aspects of it, but I'll go anywhere in any order you want. So
I bring this up because when we challenge this thing of credibility, especially in UFO cases, it demands some incredible evidence. So like when one of the reasons that the government, or one of the reasons that the case has been so much on the outs, not just Billy Myers, but the UFO stuff, is because evidence. Like it's not the easiest thing in the world to come by evidence. And even when you do come by evidence, like even when you do have whistleblowers, people tend to be like, that sounds too out there.
Right.
And they tend to just kind of put it off. So evidence
Well,
becomes one of those things, or
right.
credibility becomes one of those things that is paramount. That's the only
Okay.
reason I'm hitting at
If
this.
I may, about evidence and about this specifically, so we satisfy it as best we can on it.
Yes.
Meir published information, I think a couple decades ago, when the play Aaron, I'll just say alleged one, said to him, don't publish those photos anymore because those photos have been manipulated and they're not the ones you took. Now, they did that before people were calling out, oh, this is a hoax or that. There's a whole bunch of photos, supposedly of Mars and other places, everything.
Yeah.
And he said, well, what happened? They said, well, look, you take your photos, you take your film, you bring it to the camera shop in this town. They send it out for development. And you've had, not only have you had photos stolen, you've had photos and film stolen, you've had them falsified and all the rest. So we suggest to you, you disavow that. People will attack you for it anyhow. But now you've just hit on the very important thing, evidence. I will tell you and your audience right now, there is not one other UFO case where anybody has ever presented one piece, and I mean literally, of verifiable extraterrestrial evidence. And here's the difference. In the Meir case, over 1,200 clear, primarily daytime photos of up to 4 of the craft in a shot, 8 films, a video, sound recordings, metal, and the Meir case is so overflowing with evidence that has been analyzed by independent photographic, military, aerospace, sound, and scientific experts with no hoaxing ever found. And this is where Joe even said to me after he said, where's he getting 80 UFO photos in India in 64? And then he said, if any skeptic can explain to me how the special effects director for the film 2001, Stanley Kubrick, when Kubrick was shown Meir's foot, there's a film clip of a UFO circling around a tree, and all the skeptics say, oh, it's just a model on a string, despite the fact that when you look at it and analyze it, it's large objects in front of a tree, maybe a couple hundred feet away from the camera. And so they asked the special effects expert, can you duplicate that? And he said, well, considering the cost of equipment and staffing, I'll need 15 people and $80,000 to duplicate that in 1980.
So your argument is you believe that it was impossible for him to duplicate it based on you believe it was impossible?
No, actually, I don't even have to believe it because to date, and there's one skeptical, I actually worked with him long distance in 2009 because that one photo you showed of the really weird thing, he made a model of it. Well, he almost made a model of it. He could not do the detail. We're talking about Billy Meir is a one-handed Swiss guy. He's not a watchmaker. He's a guy that works with that one hand. And our friend in London, Phil Langdon, tries to duplicate Meir's films. He can't. We have a film clip where the ship comes in, Meir zooms in, broad daylight, 2 different lights in broad daylight, 1976. Phil Langdon, 2009, 2012, cannot duplicate it. He makes a model that he suspends and puts white dots on it. We have independent expert photographic and film analysis going back to 1978, 80, all the way to 2 years ago on any and all of Meir's truly important UFO photos, UFO films, any of that stuff. So I know this now. I know the people who were the original investigators on the case who spent 10 years there, who were witnessing things themselves. A military guy, retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, 2 skeptical independent investigators. Now, I want to just interrupt my monologue and I'll shut up for a second to say this. Okay. If the people who are into UFOs would demand the scrutiny and the evidence that exists in the Meir case from all the phonies, there isn't one person, and I mean, I'm unabashed about this. I don't mind taking the heat. I've challenged every one of the so-called UFO experts to debate the singular authenticity of the Meir case. The only person who took up that challenge a couple of years back was a guy named Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physicist on Roswell. Stanton Friedman and I had a debate. The radio audience voted on it. Stanton Friedman got 2% and I got 98%. This is an expert who's on UFOs who knows nothing.
But that's not the same. I know what you mean. Stanton Friedman, he's a mainstream physicist that deals with the UFO topic. He's
a nice guy, by the way. He's a friendly old grandpa, but he he's a skeptic on the Meir case because he tried to get the lead investigators to let him come in on the investigation. And they said, no UFO people, JPL, NASA, USGS, film experts, sound experts, no UFO people are going to touch this because they're going to contaminate it. And so he started to attack the case after that. That's the facts on it.
But he might have attacked the case because he was dubious about the case. Like, it may not. I understand what you mean. You're trying to say he had an incentive to attack the case because he was pushed out of the case. He might have took him being pushed out of the case and having that none of these organizations being allowed into the process to be somewhat evidence that the process might have been somewhat corrupted. Like, I guess what I'm saying is it may not have just been he was pushed out because he had feelings about it. It might have been he was pushed out and he thought they're keeping everyone out because they don't want people to see something. Does that make sense? Like, it may not necessarily.
Yeah, it would be so, Jamarl, if they pushed out the UFO community, which is packed with the most incompetent, unscientific people on the face of the earth for a field. And what they didn't push out were the people who actually were credentialed experts in the very field that would otherwise expose the case as a fraud if it was. You understand? When you go to NASA, here's what I want to say, because I don't want to divert from anything. I'll talk about any aspect of this.
No. I want you to make your case. Like, I don't want. I've heard, like I said, I've looked into this case, and but let me say it this way: when I try to present, when the New York Times, Politico, Washington Post came out with the UFO stuff, and when these guys, Alejandro and so forth, start coming on, it gave a certain political leverage that allowed me to kind of talk about some of these subjects.
Right.
I usually present what I consider to be the strongest cases, because if you're going to present something to the public on something that's not necessarily the most well-known, you present your strongest evidence. The Meir's case never fit into that for me because it was too ambiguous. Like, it was odd. Like, there was too much stuff that was too odd, and it was too back and forth where people had to go at it. And I got to be honest, like I said, I looked at the case and I thought, this, like, it doesn't. Let me ask you this, because I don't want to hit the case too much. The recent filings, Lou Alejandro and the people coming out, Tom DeLonge, with the New York Times, Washington Post, this information coming out in WikiLeaks and everything else. From your perspective, as being Billy Myers, as being the only person, and even that I need a challenge, but your perspective being Billy Myers as being the only person, almost like a prophet of sorts. How does the disclosures by Tom DeLonge count from your perspective?
Let me tell you. Tom DeLonge used some of Billy Myers' UFO photographs without attribution. He refused to credit him. And what else do they have?
Wait a minute. Which videos? Okay, which footage did Tom DeLonge use?
He used photographs. He's got at least one of my. I found him on Instagram. I almost went nuts, so I wrote him. He wouldn't respond. Here's what I'm going to state to you straight on, and this will give you a little on it.
Okay.
Nothing presented by Tom DeLonge, Lou Elizondo, any of these people, nothing there can be shown to be, first of all, none of it's clear. It's all this stuff that is, I mean, it's embarrassing. And not only that, nothing can be shown to have an extraterrestrial origin. And the reason is that most of what you see entirely in the UFO field is secret US and other military craft. This is a disinformation campaign by TTSA and Dumbo there. Pardon me, the guy doesn't know anything. He said, well, these cool spooks have brought me in to talk about UFOs, and I'm an expert. My gosh. I mean, it's embarrassing, except for the fact that certainly the American public, I know, look, I'm not here for a popularity contest. I don't know of another so-called UFO case. Roswell was real. I have no problem with it. There's nothing left. There have been 8 or 9 crashes, most of which we don't know about, with androids piloting a craft from another star system. They weren't the ETs. There's no grays here. There's nobody being abducted by extraterrestrials, but there are people being screwed around with by secret military. I've got an interview on my channel with a guy who's a former Army Ranger who tells me how, we could go into a neighborhood at night, pump gas into a home, mess with people, implant memories, whatever. Whole of the topic. Let's get back to what you asked. TTSA is an exercise in exploiting the gullibility of the American public and others, primarily for the purpose of keeping us off of the real terrible stuff that is coming our way in this country that we are now already in, that some of which was foretold in the 40s, told to Meir in the 40s, published by him in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. 2 civil wars coming to America, foretold in 81 and 87. And I laughed when I read the first one in 86. Ha ha, Civil War coming to America. Who's the Swiss guy? We're in the beginning of it. I'll just say one more thing.
No, go ahead.
If Tom DeLonge or any other so-called UFO expert, I guarantee you, offer them a nice, polite debate with me, and they will turn it down, because this is their cash cow, publishing absolute misleading disinformation about non-existent extraterrestrials and secret military craft under the banner of UFOs, as if, frankly, we could do anything with information about UFOs. We're not going to get advanced technology, because every time we get any technological break, it's used to kill people by a military industrial complex that is bringing down on this country a life-ending war with Russia that needn't happen, except it was actually predicted. It's in the Meir material for decades. And here's the kicker. He didn't predict it. The predictions go back 10,000 friggin' years. The Plejaren have been handing from one prophet to another, getting their prophecies, working with these people for over 10,000 years. Basic purpose is to help us assure our own future survival. UFOs are friggin' least important thing. Can I prove they're real in the Meir case? Piece of cake. I'll respond to anybody. We've got all the documentation you could want. There is no evidence in any other single case. You've got Nick Pope and Richard Dolan and all the rest of these people. And I've said to them, well, would you like to debate? No. Why? Because they're peddling friggin' bullshit. It's great for selling books. I have offered the top skeptics in the world, James Randi. I said, I'll come to your institute and I will debate you on the Meir case and all your skeptical experts. I will be alone on your stage, and let's see what your audience thinks by the time I'm done.
To be fair,
yes.
I mean, to be fair, if we're going to make the argument, or if you're going to make the argument that Richard Dolan and some of these other guys are doing this because it's kind of a cash cow and everything else, I mean, come on, you're calling
where's their evidence?
For all intents and purposes a prophet. And you've been making movies and so forth. And I don't begrudge you for making movies on it. I'm just saying the incentive for them to make those books are the same incentive it is for you to say Billy Myers is a prophet.
Here's the difference.
The Myers stuff.
I make films I've made maybe 5-6 films. I make them on my own expense. I'm not paid by Meir. I'm not paid by anybody.
No, I don't think you're paid by Myers. I guess what I'm saying is you've invested yourself in this particular narrative of events, that Billy Myers is somewhat of a prophet. He's the only person who's ever contacted UFOs or something to that effect. And everybody else is, for the most part, is a hoax and is doing it just to sell books.
I have to see evidence, Jamaro. People say to me, well, you don't know about this case or that. And I say, listen, I've spent 40 years in this field. I know about probably 98% of the claimed cases. What case? What case? Was something seen? Yes, of course. Are all those experts or witnesses that, what's his name, Stephen Greer, who I offered the Meir material to, he wouldn't even look at me because, are all those people, are they liars? Of course they're not liars. Well, they've seen UFOs. Of course they've seen UFOs. That doesn't make it extraterrestrial. I've had 7 sightings. Only 2 that I know of are extraterrestrial because I was within 20 feet of one of their craft in the mountains of Brazil 7 years ago, and I rarely speak about it because UFOs aren't that important. But these quacks and charlatans that UFOs and disclosure, they don't want to disclose it. None of them will speak about the Meir case. Why? Let them tell us why it's a hoax.
Because they don't believe it's real. I mean, it's not, I guess my feeling is it's not
because they're incompetent.
No, it's not that they're not speaking about the Myers case because they don't think it's, because they're peddling whatever they're peddling. They just don't believe it's real. Like they believe when they're putting their strongest foot forward. Let me say it this way. They don't speak about the Myers case for the same reason I don't really talk about the Myers case on my show. I may bring up some of the UFO stuff that comes out from, some of these guys who are putting on, I think I had Grant Cameron on the show,
Right.
where he's talking about consciousness and talking about crafts and stuff like that. But I don't think he's a charlatan. I don't think he's a hoax at all. I think Grant Cameron is talking about the research that's there dealing with consciousness research. And he's talking about the connection from experiencers. Now, you're saying that there's no such thing as this, that all of the stuff is bogus, that the only person who's in this that's real is Myers. And
I'm also saying UFOs are real, but 90-something% of what we see is secret military. It goes back 100 years in our history.
no,
So,
that's fair. I don't,
okay,
I don't feel like there are people on my channel who would agree with you completely on that, who thinks that the stuff that the U.S. government is putting out,
most of it.
Tom DeLonge with all these
Also,
spooks are just talking about U.S. military craft, and
right.
that this is just their way of kind of bringing in this stuff into the public's eye in order to get more tax dollars or something like that to go in the military.
And to keep people from looking at what's really happening in their lives. Listen, let's just say there was evil aliens everywhere, which we have no evidence of. The evil has come from our own world, from us. We better straighten ourselves out. If there were evil aliens, what do you think we're going to do about it? Why are they? Well, let's raise money and let's have a big site to raise money about aliens. Meir case, never heard of it. $110 million the Pentagon spent to find UFOs, and they couldn't find all those free Meir films, which are authentic, and they're the clearest thing. There isn't anything, where is the evidence from Grant Cameron, from Stephen Greer?
Well, let me ask you this. When the United States dropped the nuclear bomb, and you had all of these UFOs that were bombing they were buzzing the nuclear silos, and some even buzzing the White House. What do you think that was? So you believe that those U.S. craft, even back then, or at the very least military craft, even back then, you don't believe that those were genuine UFOs?
Okay.
Because there were soldiers who saw it, who were freaking out, who would tell.
There has been an observation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, there's an observation of our planet that has gone on for a very, very, very long time by extraterrestrials. Some of the craft in the sky, by the way, some of the craft seen in the 40s and all that, those were the German craft that the Germans had that were not true interplanetary craft. They'd been helped. This is where you can say, no matter whether it's an extraterrestrial or anything else, wherever human beings are involved, things can and will get screwed up, because the Germans were helped for a period of time to develop alternative craft with the misguided hope that they would help to bring peace to our world, because they were very orderly and they were law but intended all. So then the Nazis, when the Nazis come to power, they're starting to use these craft. And when the remaining Nazis fled to South America, down there with a couple of the remaining craft, the plans fell into the possession of the U.S. military, Canada, Britain, even Russia, the Allies, and others. Now, what we saw a lot during the 40s, 50s, and early 60s were these old ships, really, from the Germans being piloted around, and they had some capabilities, nothing outside of our world, but they could fly very fast. They had some anti-gravity, and they had means. I was told even by Lieutenant Colonel Stevens, he was investigating UFOs from 1947 on, the U.S. Air Force, before he got involved in the Meir case, and he was privy to secret documentation showing during World War II, the Germans sent up 2 discs when there was a huge Allied bombing run. 200 bombers were coming. They sent up 2 discs, and what Stevens told me was that the one that was the most important one was positioned so that because they had certain type of electronic, I don't know if it was electromagnetic or whatever, they could fire at the lead bombers and disrupt the firing pattern of the engine. So the bombers are slowing up and the planes are crashing into each other. Never made the news, but the Allies supposedly lost huge number of craft on this then aborted bombing run. So UFOs, you've got terrestrial, you've got extraterrestrial. But when it comes to people who don't believe, I don't give a crap about what people believe. I've said to religious people that I know, I said, I have absolutely no respect for your beliefs. And I hope you feel the same way about mine. I like your values. I like it if you are a principled person. If we're going to have a discussion on facts, don't give me your Bibles and your books, because they're all based on this illogical premise. And that is, what's in this book is true because this book says it's true. There is every religion in the world right there. I don't care about beliefs. Evidence and facts. I personally started checking out stuff that when I was reading the early stuff in the Meir material, when they were telling me about the ancestry of the Jewish people, I have Jewish ancestry, I'm going, oh my gosh, are these Nazis from outer space? They're so harsh. So then that brought me to do something I never did. I started reading the Old Testament. I'm going, holy cow, this guy's a genocidal maniac. They're telling the truth. All right. We can just say that's where beliefs are. Evidence. My research team has a former NASA aerospace engineer, the recently retired vice president director of operations for orbital flight systems. They compete with Musk as an aerospace agency. I recently have another guy I don't even know, an attorney who said, I've gone through all of your scientific evidence on Meir's stuff because he publishes scientific information decades before we know anything about it. He says, this is courtroom quality. Here's what I'm trying to say. Evidence, and anybody can now vet all of Meir's evidence. Not anything, pardon me, all the UFO experts say has evidence. There's nothing I can examine. So I don't care about beliefs.
Do you believe?
No.
Let me ask you this. Well, I know it's the belief thing. With that being said, I mean, I guess you say that, saying from the standpoint of evidence, you like to hit hard on the evidence thing because I think you try to build up this idea of credibility. Meir's saying that he went back in time to see Jesus. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is,
let me get to that one for you.
Yeah. Hit that one because I'm curious about your take on this. Do you believe?
Right.
There are two parts to this. Do you believe that Meir's was experiencing contact at one point and then started doing models at the point where the contact waned?
Never.
Do you believe he ever did models at all?
Never. The research on that is, I've been to Switzerland 18 times. I've gone through every inch of that place. Models. You're in basically a farm-like property in the rural highlands with a man with one hand who himself, up until his heart and everything, is out there working with all the people on the land. And what is their equipment when you open the sheds? You don't see watchmakers' tools and fancy stuff. You see diesel equipment, axes, rakes, and hoes, and this and that. I know the people there. What do? They drive tractors. I've worked in the woods with them. Almost 20 years on site with people. And I'm going, okay, well, where's the hoax? Where's the models? Models were given to Meir. Models were made by the investigators to compare.
Right there. You said models were given to Meir's. What do you mean models?
By kids. They made, some school kids made little models. Meir actually took photographs of them to see how they would show. We have a photo book of 617 of Meir's photos, all pre-computer, all pre-Photoshop, all pre-digital, and they've been digitized for clarity. And you are looking at something not made on Earth. And when you do read all the photo analysis, and the most recent stuff has been done with state-of-the-art computer technology, Meir didn't have anything. We have one photo. You showed that wedding cake ship. There's one taken at night. It's a gold one. The experts are, that's just a gold model up against the black curtain. A guy who's a photo expert and who did a 74-page analysis of all those 64 wedding cake UFO shots. He took that one photo, dropped it in Photoshop, and we show you how to do it online. Drop it in Photoshop. You crank the contrast up, the brightness down. Suddenly, you're looking at a real object at night, hovering over a graveled road with a grassy hillside and one of the Swiss meter-high white posts there. How in 1981 does a one-armed guy in the middle of the night take a photograph of a real craft that would fool Photoshop 21 years later? And then you go back to the 1978-80 original photo analyses, computer analyzed with the technology of the day, and they're saying, here's how you can tell. Edge enhancement, thermography, blah, blah, blah. Nobody will talk about this. That's why the so-called UFO experts won't come near me.
They won't come. With all due respect, and I'm dealing with this case respectfully because I appreciate you coming on the show to have, like I told you before, I was skeptical of the case. So I appreciate you coming on the show to hear my skepticism on this particular case. That's never easy to hear somebody saying, hey, I'm completely skeptical of this claim. But I want to just gently push that it's not that they're not coming near this case because of anything. They're not coming near this case because it's not their strongest arrow, if that makes sense. It's too odd.
Only arrow.
No, it's not. That's what I mean.
Give me an example. Give me an example of a real UFO case. Maybe I don't know about it.
okay, let me say it this way. The only thing we have to judge by is credibility. And I know you say evidence in the sense of photos and everything else. So fair enough. Let's put the photos into the analysis. I always say that photos are neither here nor there, even though I understand in your case you're saying, look, it's impossible for this one-armed man to be making all these photos. So let's put that to the side for the moment. I do think there are other cases. I don't have this belief that everybody who's talking about this is a hoax, meaning you were talking about millions of people around the United States who are being hoaxed and screwed with by the military, and I don't believe that's the case.
Give me an example so at least I can know
like people who consider themselves experiencers. Well, now, whether you're talking about contactees, whether you're talking about people who believe they're being abducted, whether you want to talk about people meeting these quote-unquote light beings or whatever else, I mean, there are a lot of people who say they've had some level of contact, either low level or intense. Now, people can say that's a hoax if they don't have any kind of association with it. There's no stone to get to, and they're completely skeptical and everything else. Fair enough. But I'm saying that Myers is not the only person who's claimed contact.
We have to define that just a little tighter, and let me explain to you. People can claim they have subjective experiences. Have some people been abducted? Yes. By extraterrestrials? No evidence. Now, let me go back to that. Wait a minute.
Go ahead. I'm not. Go ahead.
All right. Go ahead. Look, here's where it pains me, and I'm honest with any of whatever goes on out there. And believe me, I started going to channeling events in 1986.
And just so I'm clear for this, they're not. I guess my point here is they're not touching this case. I know that's double negative, but they're not touching this case because they don't believe this is their strongest arrow. And I understand your point. You believe that this is their only arrow and this is the only case that's real and so forth. But I'm making a point. It's not personal. They're looking at this and saying, this case, it's too odd. The man said he went back in time with aliens to speak to Jesus. This is not our strongest case. Like, I think
let's go to that. Look, I always represent the case this way. There are things I can absolutely prove, meaning the evidence will draw the conclusion of authenticity. Okay, there's other things, and I always say it. I consider it speculative. I have no means of proof. If only all the alleged contactees and everybody else would endorse the same principles. Here's my thing. I have no way of determining things from the far distant past or the as yet arrived future. Now, let me clarify the so-called Jesus thing. No. Meir never claimed to meet Jesus. Why? But yes, here's the thing. No such human being, according to the Meir material, ever walked the face of the earth named Jesus
I think
Christ.
He said Emmanuel, something to that effect. I think
right. Now, there's a huge difference here. And again, I'm not going to check. If you say to me, well, do you believe that happened? I'll tell you, I don't know. Well, could Meir be lying? Well, he could be, but there's a few problems with the lie premise as well. One of which is I've never found any lie in any of the information that I can verify and check out. Okay. And well, what are you going to do with the claim that he met Emmanuel? I say, I can read this information and see, because the published book called The Talmud of Emmanuel was seen by a skeptical professor, another guy who was formerly at Oregon State, who said, well, this must be a Bible hoax. I'm going to get into it. And instead of that, he finds out after spending over a year examining it, and he's a guy who's into comparative religion, and he comes out with his own book saying, the Talmud of Emmanuel appears to be the original writing of this man Emmanuel, from which the book of Matthew, on which it is based, not the other way around. And he has 350 different items that he, as a religious person, I'm not a religious person, he says, here are the inconsistencies, 350 of which were resolved by what's in this book. Does that make it true? No. But you'll find in the Old Testament in one place, which is Isaiah 7:14, I believe, and once in Matthew 1:23, and his name shall be called Emmanuel. Now, find me an independent biography of a man named Jesus Christ, who's been the most famous person to ever walk the face of the earth. Find me a biography of him. They don't exist.
I don't know. I don't think that. I don't have this idea of Jesus existing or not existing. I don't necessarily have feelings about it one way or the other. I'm not a religious person in this respect. The dinosaur one, also, that one jarred me a little bit.
Those are all part of the space photos that Meir took. Look, tomorrow, we have to have...
I understand, but hear me out on this. you can understand that from the perspective of somebody on the outside looking in, to hear that the photos have been changed.
Only not the UFO photo. This is where it does drive me nuts. I've said to people, look, Meir has said, oh God, you know, this is really a hot one. Meir said he thought his photos were real. The player said, excuse me, these are tampered with. They're screwed with, as they screwed with this Asket Nira photo, which we can show. I've got a whole page on that. And the woman who was the Dean Martin singer, because all the people love to go to this. She just went to Switzerland last year. She asked me to contact Billy. She said, I know Billy didn't hoax that. Can I meet him? And I said, he doesn't meet people, but I'll ask him. He said, yes. She and her friend came over there. If you look at it, it's technically impossible that Meir manipulated the photos. We know that. Anybody wants to think their way through it. But look what's happened. All the skepticism, not one of Meir's UFO photos or films has been shown to be fake. This isn't the Billy Meir space photo case. It isn't the Billy Meir Dean Martin case. This is the evidence that these people, including Tom DeLonge and all your fancy UFO experts, if it was a hoax, why don't they they don't want to deal with it? Why? They're afraid that because I'm such a testy little guy that I'm going to get up there and make them look like goddamn idiots?
No.
And I would.
I honestly,
I've got them up. Move on. None of the. Listen, I've taken on these people to the best of my ability. They don't want to deal with it because they want people to chase their damn tails and chase lights in the sky about which they can do nothing. In 1987, Billy Meir publishes a document. The destruction of the WTC, i.e., the World Trade Center by terrorists, will only be the beginning. Oh, he backdated it. He couldn't have known about it. Ah, blah, blah, blah. Except in the same document that we've had on site. Yeah, we published it in 2002. And guess what? One after another of events and things that happened after it was published are in the same document. Gee. How did he know all those other things?
Because that's one of the other interesting parts of the Billy Meir's case. The prophecies. He has prophecies. Look, prophecies come across as religious to me, and I'm not the most religious person in the world. But
why?
Why does it come across as religious to me?
Yeah.
And maybe it's because my mom was a Christian. I grew up in a Christian background. So when I hear prophecy in my head, that comes across as this kind of Christian thing.
If I may intersect, I want to tell you something. On Earth, and I'm sure this is having a lot of fun there in the chat room, but on Earth.
No, so they're just right. Somebody wrote, somebody wrote a political post. Where is it? It's up at the top saying something about Hillary Clinton. This is Baltazar 228. When there's more evidence for this man's claims than for Hillary Clinton, own your vote or reads time-traveling bots. He's joking. The Democratic Party essentially saying there's more evidence for this stuff as opposed to what Hillary Clinton is saying about the Russians or the Russian bots. Yeah.
In 2008, Billy Meir was told that Hillary Clinton will never become president, which is fortunate for the people of Earth, because if she did become president, we would have a nuclear war that would end us promptly.
I mean, that wasn't what was going to start a war, but that doesn't take a prophet to know that. That takes somebody who knows Hillary Clinton and knowing like the top of democracy, top of governments.
How about this? In 1958.
Well, wait, just so people understand what you're saying, you're talking about what do they call it? Enoch prophecies, to something to that effect.
That's one of the bodies of prophecies in there. But here's the thing about religious, and then I'll get back. No, I'll interject this. In 1958, Billy Meir, in a document of about 162 specific separate things, said, the United States of America will have two wars called the Gulf War with Iraq. The second war will be led by a president who's the son of a former president. It will lead to an unbelievable disaster and terrorism, etc. In that document from 1958, he named AIDS by name. He foretold plastic credit cards, portable telephones, that everybody in the future will have not only a television, which is the up-and-coming technology in the 50s, but they will have computers which will be interconnected electronically around the world. He foretold the prostitution, child abuse, women abuse. There are 162 in there. They one after another, and that's on the social level, the world event level. The scientific information that he has foretold specifically, everything from stuff pertaining to wandering black holes, the information about Jupiter, which he published 5 months before the probe got there, was regarded as the single most important discovery of the NASA JPL mission, that the planet Jupiter, its moon Io is the most volcanically active body in the solar system. That was in the possession of the military investigator before NASA made the announcement. So when we say evidence, if people want to say sarcastic things, it's okay. Your lives probably depend more on what's in the Meir material than any of the bull blink.
I'm going to look that up, by the way, because some of those prophecies, I do remember. I just don't remember when they came out. Like I remember, there were some terrifying prophecies about America. Like I do remember that, where I was listening to the contact notes and I was like, "Holy shit, that's terrifying!" And like it's one of those things where there's a lot of doomsday prophecies, but this was one of those doomsday prophecies where you could kind of see the way it's kind of working its way to it, where it's somewhat terrifying. Explain that one for me, and I'm gonna end this with allowing you to make your final statement on whatever you want to talk about. I do this for all my guests for allowing them to say the last part. But explain that the doomsday prophecy for America for me, and explain how he's saying that this is going to come to pass.
Okay. I might be able to, let me see, because I don't want to take too much time away from anything here, but,
no, you're fine.
Okay. In the Hanok prophecies, probably at least published in 1987, but probably indeed formulated long before, far in the West, it will be different. This is published in 1987 on my website by 2002. Far in the West, it will be different. The United States of America will be a country of total destruction. The cause for this will be manifold, with its global conflicts, which are continuously instigated by it and which will continue far into the future. America is creating enormous hatred against itself worldwide in many countries. 1987, remember? As a result, America will experience enormous catastrophes which will reach proportions barely imaginable to people of Earth. The destruction of the WTC, i.e., the World Trade Center by terrorists, will only be the beginning. And to those people who want to tell me, well, it wasn't terrorists, it was whoever destroyed the World Trade Center are terrorists, right? Okay, that's in there. America's greatest cities will be destroyed. There's so much here, Jamal. The predictions that go back to the 40s and the 70s about central Italy, where earthquakes will begin to become very strong and prevalent, leading to the eruptions of Mount Etna, Vesuvius, Stromboli, Mount Marsili, Campi Flegrei. Campi Flegrei is a caldera which will erupt. Parts of different countries will go into the sea. In northern Germany, the Eiffel Fields are a caldera. That will erupt and change things in northern Europe. And the last caldera mentioned, not that it's first or last to erupt, is Yellowstone. And that's all this stuff has long been in the prophecies. Prophecies are there to warn us that if we have the wit to think, we will correct our course. And I will say something about politics because Hillary Clinton was mentioned here. Politics and its ugly twin sister, religion, are the two things that keep people chomping at carrots and this hand and that. Politics is not the art of the possible. It is the art of advantage. And the problem is that people are polarized so badly that if this person on this side actually has a good idea, if you're on this side, you're not going to absolutely not support it, unless, of course, you can get something out of it for yourself. Yeah. Well, I'll support your bridge. Look, we do not live in principles. The core message in this case, and it's very ancient, and they've tried to bring it to us before, there are ways to think and ways to live that enable human life, which is ubiquitous in the universe, though we don't know it yet, to live and survive in an evolutionary course, upward spiral, where those new technologies and developments are not used to kill people all the time, such as this country has maximized its ability to do. Politics is a waste of time. They told Meir in 2016, June, the next president of the United States will be a man named Donald Trump. And he says, well, can I publish it? No, don't publish it. Wait till afterwards. Then they can tell you you're a liar too. Well, why can't I publish it now? Because he'll be killed. People in the Democrat Party and Secret Services will kill him. After the election, they will fancy up charges against him that he won it illegally and that they will try to force him out of office. All this is part of the Civil War thing. We're in it now, people.
But that, but you know,
I don't care if other people told us something.
No, it's not that. What I'm getting, look, let me say it this way. I agree with your analysis of politics in this country. Absolutely agree. Like this thing of this thing of the way the politics kind of works towards this thing of advantage. I don't necessarily think it's worthless because I don't necessarily know what else we have. You know what I mean? It's like there's nothing else that we have at our disposal where you have an organization of people that try to get things accomplished. You have this kind of fighting and tugging back and fro. I even agree with you that we are in a weird space that seems to be downward spiral. I mean, and I say this to say, you know, America was a unipolar power, and then it went from a unipolar power to having these other things around the world based on our own balance. And when we were creating our own monsters, look at what we did when we went into Iraq. You created terrorism all throughout the world. Look at how those people went into, you know, Syria, destabilizing that country, which sent refugees into Europe. And now Europe is kind of in this weird space where they're freaking out. And you have all these right-wing elements that are coming up in some of the governments. Yeah, we've done bad things. And there are ways to use technology where we don't necessarily have a downward spiral. I even agree with you from the standpoint of a sustainable life. Like this thing of there are ways to live in a way where you're sustainable. Like if you're living in a way that destroys the planet and this is your only home, you're screwed up. You're wrong. You're off. Now, if you're living in a way that lives this thing of seeing life expand itself, seeing these kind of technological advancements, allowing people to grow and prosper and so forth in this kind of cooperative society, then yeah, you're going to have a less violent world. And that's not necessarily the world that we have. I agree with you on both of those counts. The taking Trump out of office terrifies me, if I'm being honest. Like they allowed Bush to walk after murdering 1 million people, but they're coming up with charges to take Trump out of the office on impeachment. That's amazing. I mean, that's mind-blowing to me.
It is mind-blowing.
Yeah, so it's like you have maybe 20% of the population that's going to see that and say that's bogus and flip out. You're going to have another 20% of lefties that see that, who hate Donald Trump, who still say that's bogus. And I don't necessarily know if that leads to this kind of civil war type thing, but I do know it creates this huge amount of friction within the society itself. Let me ask you this. Is there anything else that I know we've talked about some of the stuff that I've been skeptical about. Is there anything else that you would like to say that goes that supersedes and giving you the last word on just a conversation back and forth?
Sure, a few things. Billy Meir is the first person on record when he was 14 years of age in 1951 to specifically warn about man-made climate change, unnatural global warming, the proliferation of the increased frequency and intensity of earthquakes and all this stuff. The first person to warn about the connection between A-bomb damage and the ozone. The first person to warn about the extraction of petroleum and natural gas and mining to earthquakes and volcanic activity. All this stuff I have on my blog alone, 700 articles. On my website, a couple hundred more. Here's the thing, and with all due respect to anybody, people who comment on UFOs should forget about it because none of us are, we cannot qualify. Phenomenon. What are you going to do with it? Okay, phenomenon. It's the least important part. Well, are there any real ones? Look at the photos. If you want the photos and films, I've got them. Nobody else, none of these people can show you anything. And it would be nice if they would just all go away and we start looking on our future survival. Babbling about UFOs, whether it's me or anybody else, while I'm the only one that can produce actual evidence of it, if we do not approach something scientifically, when it comes to science, evidence must be evaluated, not people's claims. Those are anecdotal. My claims of being within 20 feet of a small craft in the mountains of Brazil on October 3rd, 2011 at 9:05 p.m., that and $6 get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. It's irrelevant. I have received verifiably, prophetically accurate information from the Playaran. We have it time and date stamped on my website, forwarded to me through Meir, which turned out to be 100% prophetically accurate warning of an attack from a skeptic that was trying to cajole me into doing a project with him. Yeah. After I backed out upon their recommendation, he launched it, except he didn't do it on DVD. He launched it on his website along with death threats. Meir, for his trouble, has survived almost 24 attempts in his life, and I've interviewed 14 eyewitnesses, and I've seen bullet holes. And in one of our films, we show you stuff. People want to be skeptical about the only evidence in the world, and yet they want to talk about anecdotal bullshit, so-called contact, because they think they've been abducted by aliens who are advanced beings that have come hundreds of light years, millions of light years or whatever, to come here and float Aunt Edna through the wall and Uncle Joe to take their valuable genetic material and their emotions, because we're so balanced here that advanced extraterrestrials need to find us and get the crap that we are full of. If we don't start thinking logically, Jamarl and friends, we are in even deeper doo-doo. We have been given...
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
We have been given recommendations in what's called the spiritual teaching, non-religious, belief-free. This is how your mind works. This is how you can learn to progress forward and get away from religion and politics and complaining about things endlessly, while the real powers that be know how the mind works, and they're rolling over you. According to Meir's information, I first posted in 2006 a short video because I asked Billy, was the Iraq War fundamentally about oil? No, it's fundamentally about your dollar, and if things go a certain way, you may as well roll cigarettes with your paper money. Now everybody's talking about financial. Well, Billy said, what's next? What's coming is a huge global financial crash, which will wipe out of history anything that's come before it. There is also a plan to genetically modify viruses and DNA, so all the rest of this by some of these same people to wipe masses of people out. Other people have come up with that. But if you read the new prophecies and predictions, what's coming, you can see it. Forget about the UFOs unless you want to make a concrete, conclusive determination. Anybody can email me and challenge me. I will send you the links. You can look, and then you can compare it to all the UFO experts, and you will find, I guarantee you, try to get any of them to debate this and analyze, what is this photo real or not? You mean you're going to tell me that you know more than a U.S. Air Force Office of Special Investigator? That you know more than real photo analysts because you're trying to sell books on Rendlesham or Roswell and all the stuff for which there's zero evidence? People, you don't know anything about UFOs, and it doesn't matter. Check this information now. If this man has, as I said, been publishing, I was in Vegas a few years back. A guy comes up to my table at a MUFON event, shaking his head no at my stuff. What is it, sir? Can I help you? This Meir case can't be real. Got to be a hoax. Really? What do you do? I'm a retired judge. I said, Your Honor, could I step in your courtroom for a minute? And this is how people who are really qualified work. What can I do for you, young fella? I said, here, if I say to you that NASA's claim that they're the first ones to discover that the core of the planet Mercury, the iron core, is responsible for the contraction of the surface of the planet, that NASA didn't discover, my buddy in Switzerland published it 32 years ago, would I have to prove it to you? Well, of course you'd have to prove it. So if I show you this book with this copyright date, Your Honor, you see it? Yes. And I go here to this page where he asks this alleged extraterrestrial woman, what's the reason for the contraction of the surface? And she says, oh, that's simple. It's the core of the planet, the metal core of the planet. I said, in your courtroom, Your Honor, who prevails? And he says, you do. How much is the book? What's the because they understand law and science. Most people don't understand how investigation works. They don't understand science. They don't understand logic, testing, and means, motive, and opportunity, but they have opinions. Folks, get your opinions focused around saving your asses, because what is in process here, what will unfold, according to Meir, after 2020, if the people of this country do not change this country for the better, the USA as a superpower will cease to exist, meaning civil war, breakup, and then we will be foolish enough, if they take Trump out or whatever, to initiate a nuclear war with Russia that we lose. Yeah, everybody else loses too, but there will be nothing left here. Read the predictions of Jeremiah, read the prophecies of Enoch, and these guys were not religious. They were just co-opted into religions. This is what this is about, and it's why you don't hear about it, except whenever you do, it's the skeptics who tell you, well, this photo in space, forget the stuff. Don't you think if you can't kill a guy after 23 attempts, you're going to try to assassinate his character?
Let me say this. It's funny. The weird thing with the Myers case, I wasn't on this camp of not wanting to believe.
Don't believe it. Find out if it's true.
Like, I guess my feeling of this, when I looked at this case, I thought to myself, this is amazing. And then I started, it started being like, okay, maybe this is too amazing. And that's kind of where it is. I don't know if people necessarily want to disbelieve this case. Like, if that makes sense. I don't know if, I understand that some people are skeptical. I understand. And I think I understand why they're skeptical. Let me ask you this. Why do you believe people are so skeptical about this case? Voluminous amounts of information.
I'm sorry? Say it again.
Why do you think people are skeptical about this case? Why do you think people are so skeptical about this particular case?
A few reasons. One, we are absolutely polluted via the internet, via the media, via TV movies with imaginary alien stuff. Meir, by the way, in 58 predicted this. People will fall into phantasmagoria. They will be tricked by what they see. They will lose their sense of reality. Do you think anybody, any of us really, by looking at a photo, can tell if it's real or not? That's why these photos have been tested now by 4 or 5, whatever, independent people using technologies that they reported. And now with state-of-the-art technology, you can do this yourself. You'll find out why this is or isn't real. But the reason people are skeptical is because they think they know so goddamn much when they are flipping burgers in their regular life and they're not experts on anything. Let's be honest here. What do you think? So they get your attention with the controversial UFO photos and films. Okay, that's good. What's the higher standard of proof? The prophetically accurate scientific information, not I predict, but rather when they tell Meir, well, the reason for that is this. This is what your scientists will ultimately discover, and we've got it in copyrighted books decades before it's ever discovered. But no, people are experts on everything because they've got Game Boy and Xbox and cell phones and tablets. They think they know some shit. They don't know shit. They're in deep shit, and they don't know it. So that's why for the past 40, 50, 60, you don't find the Meir case as being revealed as, wow, this is going on. If it's true, it's obviously the most important thing in human history. But no, we're going to raise money for To the Stars Academy and get some kind of a guy who seems a little brain damaged to be our rep out there who's going to talk about UFOs and top secret clearances. I don't have that yet. I don't have a top secret clearance anywhere. I've been to Switzerland 18 times. I've had my own experiences. I've been a skeptic in the beginning of stuff. I know the original investigators. So if people in chat room or anywhere else want to conduct a series, if they care enough, if this is more than entertainment, because that's the other reason, because people are skeptical, they want to be entertained, and that's a little bit, it's too good to be true, what you were saying. And people may, oh, it's too good to be true. Okay, so now if we show you this thing that looks like a primitive video game from the Air Force, oh, the object's moving this way, the object's moving that way, oh, it's a shadow. Oh, really? And then we show you Billy Meir zooming in on, he's within 15 feet of a UFO on the ground in broad daylight. Oh, no, too good to be true. Oh, it's a hoax. It's a model. This is where we got to clear up our thinking. If we don't, we're toast. I don't give a crap.
To be fair to Tom DeLonge and to the Stars Academy, my issue with Tom DeLonge is more so that he's surrounded by spooks. Like, because he's surrounded by spooks. He has a bunch of people from the United States military that are surrounding him. And these guys are putting this kind of threat model out of, we're trying to threat detection and everything else. This was
threat.
It's
military shit.
Yeah, it's military stuff. Yeah. So that's my issue with it. To be fair to Tom DeLonge, I don't think it's the videos. I think they're bringing out stuff, documents and everything else going for the next however long. And the information that they're bringing out, I think is more so the fact that the government itself is saying something about it, not so much that it's Tom DeLonge. Tom DeLonge, when he was on Joe Rogan, he had a horrible interview with Joe Rogan. I don't think it's Tom DeLonge. I think you have this government personnel for the first time coming out saying, yes, this is real.
But what's real? Jamaro, this is what I'm trying to drive at. I don't care what the government says because 90% is going to
wait. Let me explain what I mean. I mean. What do I mean by real? For the longest time, the government has said, this is not real. This is swamp gas. This is bogus. There's nothing to see here, folks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have these big flashy headlines that was obviously planned because it came out in multiple periodicals all at once. Washington Post, Politico, New York Times. Oh my God, Harry Reid and this organization has been studying aliens for the United States government in the secret Black Budget Project. Now, even this was somewhat of a hoax in the way they came out about it because Frank Cameron had talked about this coming out for years before this came out. So this was like planned years in advance before this came out that they were going to release this information in a particular way. Now, your point is, yeah, those are just military craft. This is bogus. And they're just doing this in order to kind of obfuscate from things that are going on. But for the longest time, the United States government would not own up to the fact that this existed. And you had the public, for the most part, that would not give this the time of day. The only reason that you and I are talking about this right now is because that stuff came out and gave the latitude for me to have this conversation on my channel. Otherwise, I don't know if the latitude would have existed to have this conversation. So I understand that you think that this is valueless, that these are people looking in the wilderness and all this other stuff. But the fact that we're here right now having this conversation is in large part because of what took place in regards to what Tom DeLonge and what those guys are coming out, giving the political space to have this conversation.
Right. So here's the thing. Nothing is necessarily, or very few things may be necessarily useless, because anything is a double-edged sword.
Yes.
Let's just say I view their whole thing as a negative that has created a positive. This is why the Meir, it teaches about cause and effect. It teaches physics that you can understand how life works. So they are out there doing a big bogus thing. They will not, I guarantee you, they'll never acknowledge even the existence of the Meir case. When you talked about Harry Reid, he's working with this guy, Robert Bigelow, who's got a huge aerospace thing. A lot of people think that a lot of these craft come from there. So you and your audience and my audience, we are the minority of people who, if we choose to, can see through the obfuscation, the potential for a fake ET attack, threat assessment that's going on with all this. Why threat? Who do we have to fear from outside of ourselves?
Well,
so you've got the spooks.
They want
all
the money
talking,
to
right? This is all. Look, if I could, I go and I give lectures at times. My lectures can go for 4 hours. I could easily do 8. I've been invited. I've done 2 university lectures here in Arizona at the invitation of a skeptical professor. And the thing that really blew his mind, 2 days after the attacks in Paris in 2015, November, the Islamist attacks, he sends me an email. This is before I was I think it was right before I was going to do my lecture. He said, "Guess what I said to my wife yesterday? Thank you, Michael." He said, "Guess what I said to my wife yesterday? I knew this was coming. Thank you, Michael," because I sent him information that not only did Meir publish in '81, but that I've had on a DVD since 2004, warning about what's coming to Europe and Paris specifically, Islamist attacks. Now, if people's lives don't mean anything to them, we have already at least 1,500 IS sleepers in this country. There's up to 200,000 already spread through Europe because, as Meir was told as a child, a crazy woman in Germany will open the floodgates to all of this migrant stuff, which will carry with it tremendous criminality wherever you go.
You talking about Angela Merkel?
Yes. And they told him about...
She wasn't crazy. You had all of these people who landed on the doorstep of Europe from a war that was raged in Syria, propagated by the Western powers. In many cases, the United States and the UK and Saudi Arabia pushing for this war to take place in Syria.
No argument about the causes of the war. She has done something somewhat deliberately to allow a floodgate which has reached through Europe and Scandinavia, which will, as Meir said in 1987, the warriors and fanatics of Islam will reign for a long time. All will shake and quiver in Europe. They will destroy France and Italy. There will be outside invasions coming from Russia and China to different places. Meir last year warned that the US and NATO would try to provoke Russia, and they will establish a base somewhere in northern Germany. And
that doesn't really need to be a prediction, though. I guess some of this is easily foreseeable. Like for example.
Yeah, but wait a minute. I'm sorry. Look, you say easily foreseeable. I have over 200 specific examples. Who the hell has published the majority of that? And when you get into it, the scientific stuff, the destruction of the World Trade Center, the Ebola epidemic in 2002, I published the Hanok Prophecies, in which it says the Russians will move their troops to Arkhangelsk in preparation for their attacks against Scandinavia and then North America. Did you remember when the Russians did that? It was 10 years later in 2012 that the Russians moved their troops to Arkhangelsk, which caused a guy that I've known for 50 plus years, a skeptical professor, a different guy, and physician and physicist to say, wait a minute, I don't think this guy isn't crazy. I take it back. Our military should be paying attention. So really, either we take things that deserve it to be taken seriously, or we risk it at our own peril. There is, and I said this at the beginning, there isn't one, and please, people, do your research and come forward and send me evidence. Tell me I'm wrong and show me, well, so-and-so is a real contactee. Just like Meir, he's published 26,000 plus pages of information with vast amounts of prophetically accurate scientific, world event, you name it, 1,200 photos, 8 films, a video, metal samples, 7-fingered handprints embedded in cars that have lasted for 4 years, right into the, I mean, it goes on and on. A scientist from IBM says, and he's got a video on it. I cannot make this sample. The laser cutting is too precise. Every element is in here. Blah, blah. What do we mean it's too good? So when we're given real evidence, we go brain dead and go, well, I don't know. Somebody said they were abducted by aliens. Oh, let's all run over there and go ooh and ah and chase their tails. This is it. You know, things are changing in this country. By 2020, I guarantee you.
That's the part I'm interested in. So is there a timetable on? Look, I guess my feeling is I'm 2020 is a concern. I'm immensely curious about what takes place in this country going for 2020, 2024, et cetera, et cetera. I'll end it on this. Did he have a timetable associated with the prophecies themselves, either published or not published?
They do it in this way. They publish them very often out of sequence so that people will not continue to behave like deer in the headlights going, oh, look, that just happened. Gee, what's the next one? Oh, look, that just happened. They've given us very, very, very specific warnings. If you read his new prophecies and predictions about what will happen when the global financial collapse happens and the people in America are dispossessed of everything, and then the military and the police are turned against the partly heavily armed citizenry of the United States of America, when it starts to bite our butt. Well, in 1975, he's told the first time, he's told twice about the 2020 time thing. We can sit and look and watch for things if we want. We don't have to go too far. We are constantly posting updated corroborations. I exceeded on my website. I'm no longer post them on my blog because they keep on happening.
Yeah.
So all I can say is watch for things. Read the Meir material if you want to. And if you think it's a hoax, that's fine. Actually, it is fine, whatever people think or believe. I'm here to try to at least get people to become aware.
Well, I wanted to be fair on this. Like I bought on Grant. I bought on oh Jesus Christ, I forgot his name. I'm so sorry, I forgot his name. Damn it, I can't remember his name. But I bought on both of those guys onto the show to talk. So I thought it was only fair to bring on you, even with my skepticism with the case,
Sure.
Because at the very least, this is what it is. These are my questions about it. Let me put it that way. I'll put it that way. And the audience can make their own choice.
Right. Listen, I don't know if you brought on Richard Dolan, Nick Pope, Stan Friedman, any of these people, whatever. I guarantee you that they cannot or will not address the Meir case. If they're true investigators, I'm an investigator, and I use methods that are used by police, investigation, and all the rest of it. And I have people who are far more experienced in all of those technologies and sciences, and I have taken their information into account in all of this. My statement is, the Meir case is singularly authentic. We ignore it or ridicule it at our own peril. I don't give a damn. I won't be here for a lot of the stuff that will come, because this is going to unfold now for decades, and it is the way it is. If you want to do something more productive than, I say this you generically, the world, than watching video games and chasing every conspiracy theory. I even did a show myself on QAnon. I said, QAnon doesn't matter. None of this stuff matters, because we're still outside of ourselves. The first principle in this case is that we are 100% self-responsible for everything we do, we think, we feel, and act. And the second thing is we've got to learn to see things as they are. We're not going to do that either from me or any other so-called expert, conspiracy source, or anything else. If we're presented with information, it is our responsibility to search it and vet it and do with it, at least use it intelligently for our own survival, for our being able. And I will say that I think in the months to come, we will have enough reason to reflect even on our discussion. And maybe some people will say, well, wait a minute, maybe there's something to that. What do we do? And I'll say, here, there's tons of free material. I'm not going to pitch my books and videos. You want a book? You want a video? Buy something. I'll send you a free something else with it. Okay, great. That's my big commercial pitch. I don't come on to sell stuff. I have a website and a blog full of so much free stuff. Your head would spin if you start on any topic. Our distant history. the early space travelers who came here, the progenitors of the black, the red, and the white races who were here 389,000 years ago. The true history that goes back 22 million years. In the 1987 document, you mentioned AI, I think, at one point on one of your shows.
Yeah.
Meyer's already said in 87 the danger from the laser, the computer-controlled weapons that will turn against people, the very things that Musk and Stephen Hawking were warning about. He published it over 30 years ago. People, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to admit, some of that stuff is terrifying. I mean, having the AI being able to make the choice on who it kills, these drones, these killer drones flying around making choices on who it kills. Yeah, I give you that, man. It is
the
absolutely
biochipping of people, 1958.
They're doing that now,
Now.
with dogs and animals, but they're talking about doing it to people too.
Oh, they are already doing it to people. Some people are getting it done voluntarily so they can buy their groceries. People have been dumbed down so badly from all of this stuff that, that'll be easier than pulling out my credit card or paying with cash or whatever.
Yeah, that's insane.
Look, that's already 1958. He said the EU would come into existence. Along with the US, they would attempt to biochip every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth and control them. What we are faced with is a worldwide enslavement, EU and US behind it. Russia is not the enemy here. And we will find out, much to our regret as things sizzle, that it was a big mistake to want to rule the world completely. Virtually every act of terrorism, and this is in the Meir material, this has nothing to do with ETs. It comes back home here.
Yeah.
Because we, the good people of this country, don't know what insidious, demonic things have been the actual policies. Over 200 unprovoked acts of aggression since 1947. Forget about UFOs, folks. Find out what's really coming down and what you can do just to create as much navigating space for yourself, because so many things will just cease to matter. And I don't know if did you have a good challenge?
I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No,
go ahead.
go please. I'm on my soapbox because I care about this. Look.
No, you're fine, man. This is this part I agree with you on. We do not regard what we do around the world honestly. Like you can watch CNN. I give you a perfect example, and I'll end it on this because we've gone over an hour. But Rand Paul is talking to Wolf Blitzer. Rand Paul tell Wolf Blitzer, look, we're killing people in Yemen. We're assisting Saudi Arabia and murdering Yemenis. We can't keep this up. They're weaponizing hunger. They're weaponizing us, meaning we're using our resources and armaments to assist them to murder essentially starving poor people in that country. Wolf Blitzer says, well, wait a minute, but what about weapon sales? You understand that, if we stop selling weapons to Saudi Arabia, that, that's going to hurt jobs in the United States. Now, he's telling him we're murdering people.
For money.
Thousands of civilians. And the only thing Blitzer can dredge up is, what about weapon sales? There are multiple parts of this. Like Tulsi Gabbard telling Jake Tapper, hey, we're paying terrorists to murder or kill people in Syria. And Jake Tapper's like, well, the government says we're not doing that.
Yeah.
But Jake, I've been there. We are doing that. Well, the government says we're not doing that. Like this is amazing. And the American public just keeps on playing their Xbox and eating their Cheerios when we're doing really bad things around the world, and they pay it no mind.
Guess what? In one of Meir's documents from just last year, he said, of 175 so-called terrorist acts in the United States, only 6 did not trace back to the CIA and FBI. That's Billy Meir UFO content.
We're getting deep.
Well, we're getting deep. He's had 23 attempts in his life.
No, I don't mean that's in a bad way. I just mean like the CIA has done multiple false flag events. Like it's even the Kennedy documents that came out recently showed the CIA was talking about either bombing a ship in order to create a pretext in order to go into Cuba, either real or imagined. So,
well, you mentioned Kennedy. In 1953, Meir is specifically told in a series of predictions about the assassination of a John F. Kennedy, who would be the president, the subsequent assassination also of his brother. I think they may have mentioned Martin Luther King, but they also told about the poisoning of various heads of state and all. And in the thing in 53, they said this would be done by the CIA Secret Intelligence Service along with other groups. I saw a video well, I'll leave that alone.
You're fine. No, you're perfectly fine.
Look, if I have spent many hours with this man. He never talks about UFOs. it's not important to him. He's mentioned some things about, we've talked about certain things that the extraterrestrials, we've illustrated things that he's talked about. He warned about, within days of Fukushima, he was told, and we published it right then and there, the real nature of this is a ultra worst possible case scenario, a complete meltdown here. The radioactive particles, the player said, we've already detected them in Northern Europe. This will lead to a complete contamination in the seas and mutations and food chain. And then they told him about the BP disaster, what the consequences. We illustrated that one of the BP. Years later, they come out with a finding. We have illustrated that finding in a comic book on my website. What do we have to do to get people to stop jerking themselves off and go, oh, wait a minute, somebody really is out there and they're trying to help us to not destroy ourselves? You mean they're not really, we don't have to worry about them attacking? We don't have to send Tom DeLonge money for his cheap TSA to protect us from aliens?
One thing I gotta say, the attacking thing for Tom DeLonge, that bothers me. Like, yes, I like the idea that the confirmation. No, I don't like this idea of the way they're going about it. And one thing I would agree with you on, and I'll end it on this. We take certain things for granted as human beings, that we know certain things. Like, we do certain things and pretend as if, we know this in such an ironclad way that this would not have any consequences or reverberations back on us. I think that's nonsense. I write software, or at very least I used to. And in writing code, one of the things I realized early on is you can make a change to the system and not necessarily realizing that you're fucking something else up in somewhere else in the system. I changed just a little bit of code. 2 days later, hey, this thing is not acting the way it's supposed to act. Now, apply that same logic to something on a planetary scale. And you're talking about like nuclear weapons and everything else. And you're like, nope, this is no other consequences beyond the thing that we're using it for. These GMOs are not going to affect anything else at all. The way we're doing our environment is not going to hurt any. That's nonsense. Like, it's one of those things that's impossible for them to know. It's one of the things in science is falsifiability, meaning anything in science can be falsified if new research or evidence comes up, meaning it is impossible almost for scientists to tell you as a flat fact reality, this will never have any other consequence beyond the uses that we're using it for. Like, so you're using a nuclear bomb, you're like, there are no other consequences of using a nuclear bomb other than just the fact that nuclear bomb went off. How do you know that? Like, I'm bitching about it, but because I'm always blown away by the things that they say they know as a flat fact certainty. And it's like, some of that stuff you can't know as a flat fact certainty. You can't tell me that GMOs are not going to harm anything else. There's no way for you to know that.
Some GMOs are good, some are bad. A lot of it's real evil stuff. I mean, with Monsanto, that's another story. But as Meir published back in the 70s, the testing and the explosions of nuclear bombs have damaged the ozone. Not only that, for at least 400 years, we will suffer progressively from genetic disturbances and birth defects and other things. They also told Meir the whole thing with smoking and lung cancer. They said that's only partially correct. They said there's a greater portion of lung cancers and other cancers due to the fact that you idiots have been blowing off and testing nuclear bombs. Cause and effect. Cause and effect. What you're saying is exactly that. And this is the teaching in this case is so, my gosh, people would be nourished if they understood how life works instead of, let's play another game, for want of a better analogy. And that's what they count on. People will stay distracted, will stay easily manipulated, will go and watch the latest film with the great special effects, and that will be their reference points for life. So if you show them a film of a UFO, a real extraterrestrial UFO taken in 1970s, and it's doing these strange things and disappears and reappears, they'll go, oh, that can't be real. It's not glitzy enough. It's unfortunate. We have been dumbed down, folks. We have to consider that. And if you're going to really rebel, and we should, not with violence, but by taking back control over our consciousness and what's important to us in our lives. I have a song lyric. I'm a songwriter. It is the time of avaricious men lost in their lust for power. Here they come again. Watch them wave the flag to distract us from the truth while we pay like hell for the lies they tell. The thieves are on the loose. Don't go along with that in the land of the free. That's the way we give away our liberty. I wrote that 25 years ago. So there's a lot of stuff here that anybody could start to foresee if they understand cause and effect. You know, all this stuff with North and South Korea shaking hands. Well, that's right. That's very nice. And if there's a glimmer of hope there, the CIA will do something to break that up. But we have to remember China and Russia and many countries, according to the Hanai prophecies written long before, are going to turn against America. And we will be in deep doo-doo because we keep messing with everybody, like you said, around the world. So when it comes down to it, and this is not political in the sense that it's partisan, it's political only in the sense that our politics has so screwed us up wherever it appears that people polarize left and right. What's the end? Well, no, it doesn't work. Life doesn't work that way. It works on principles. And if we find a principle, when we discover the real principles in life, the living principles in life, we may very well disagree on how to accomplish them, but we'll be moving towards the same goal, not trading favors and trying to seek advantage and smiling while we're picking somebody's pocket. And that is what the Meir case is about. They'd like to see us survive, but we are so lost in our petty, materialistic, stupid, power-oriented delusions that most people will not get it in time. It's only going to be people who will question, as you do. And you don't have to believe it. That's what you said to me. Well, do you believe? No, I don't believe a damn thing. There's things I know to be true, and I can get on a stage. I've shared a stage with a world-class physicist who told my audience, we take this information seriously. We think we've made breakthroughs in our understanding of zero-point energy and hyperspace propulsion. And beyond that, I don't want to say too much. I've got this, all this is freely available on the website. Instead, we're talking about, well, we've seen these things in the sky.
That's fair. Fair enough. Fair enough. Michael Horn, thank you for coming on to the show. I hope I wasn't too much of a pain in the ass in asking.
They were great because you're also expressing the concerns of other people in the chat rooms and other people online who, if they care to, then they can make up their mind for themselves. And I will answer all emails if they want.
Absolutely. And I'll put your email at the bottom so people can see it. So thank you. Very much. I appreciate you coming on. Guys, Michael Horn, I want to thank him for coming on to the show. I've been somewhat of a skeptical SOB on this one, but he's been gracious to hear me out. Let me see. There's one other. Wesley Walker. Where is it? Hey, man, just wanted to say thank you for the t-shirt and tell Ms. Thomas I said thank you very much. I will show it off proudly. Dinner is on me tonight. Thanks again, Jamal. Thank you, Wesley Walker. I appreciate it, man. All right, guys, I'm going to end this. You guys have a good one. And again, Michael Horn, thank you very much for coming on to the show. All right, guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, everyone.